The slap came out of nowhere. It was sharp, loud, and absolutely unnecessary. The sound snapped through first class like a whip, silencing the murmur of champagne and small talk. Even the hum of the jet engine seemed to hush for a second, as if the plane itself was stunned. Walter flinched in his seat, his wrinkled hands trembling as he looked to his right. "Henrietta, did she just hit you?" Henrietta DuPont didn't answer immediately. She didn't need to. She slowly turned her head back from where the slap had landed, her pearl earring swaying gently as if mocking the violence. Her cheek was red, but she didn't raise a hand to touch it. She didn't cry out, didn't protest. She simply reached into the beige handbag at her feet, took out a slim iPad wrapped in a dark leather folio, and opened an app with a soft green icon marked Air Ethica. She tapped once, and somewhere in the back end of a system no one in this cabin had ever heard of, things began to break. If you're watching this, tell us where you're watching from, because this one's going to shake the skies. 2 minutes earlier, everything had been fine. The couple had boarded last, deliberately so, to avoid the crush of luggage and loud voices. Henrietta had guided Walter slowly down the aisle, her hand looped gently through his. She smiled softly as he muttered a 1940s jazz lyric under his breath, his steps hesitant but proud. "Easy now," she whispered. "We're almost there." Seat 1A and 1B. First class, window and aisle, side by side. Exactly what she'd booked 6 months in advance. Walter needed her close. His memory wasn't always steady, and the last thing they wanted was for him to panic at 38,000 feet. Henrietta helped him ease into 1A, then turned to place her carry-on in the overhead bin. That's when Tina Voss appeared. Tall, sharp-edged, smelling faintly of citrus perfume and impatience. Her uniform crisp, her smile tighter than her bun. "Excuse me, ma'am," Tina said flatly, holding up a small digital tablet. "I'm going to need you to move to seat 3C. This seat has been reassigned." Henrietta blinked. "I'm sorry, I booked these seats together." Tina sighed, loudly. "A diamond tier passenger needed 1B. We had to shuffle some placements. But my husband needs me next to him. I understand," Tina said, not listening at all. "But reassignment is final. We don't customize based on personal stories. You'll need to move." Henrietta stood straighter. Her voice was calm, but firm. "Then speak to someone who can undo the mistake. My husband is medically dependent on my presence during flights." Tina didn't budge. Instead, her eyes narrowed. "If you wanted to sit together, maybe you should have flown private," and before anyone could react, she slapped her. A crack across Henrietta's left cheek, audible, stunning, and terrifying in its arrogance. Walter froze, mouth open. Passengers gasped. One woman dropped her phone. Someone in 1D muttered, "Jesus." Henrietta said nothing. Not a word. She turned, took her seat calmly beside Walter, opened her iPad, and logged in with her thumbprint. A soft ping. "Welcome, Mrs. DuPont. Executive authority confirmed." She tapped a glowing icon. "Override Sky North compliance rating. Flight ETH412. Confirm?" She didn't hesitate. Tap. Elsewhere, on a cloud server connected to the FAA, to 3 European regulatory offices, and to a 3.8B ESG investment portfolio, the airline Sky North was quietly labeled non-compliant. Henrietta returned the iPad to her bag as if she'd just ordered tea. Meanwhile, Tina was already halfway up the aisle, basking in her authority. Passengers stared at her like she'd lost her mind. But Tina didn't seem to notice. She'd done this before. Impose rules, shut down complaints, remind people of their place. She had no idea who she just slapped. Walter leaned closer, still confused. "Did I miss something?" he asked, voice small. Henrietta smiled faintly and took his hand. "You didn't miss a thing, love. Just let it play out." Across the aisle, a younger flight attendant named Daniel stood frozen by the drink cart. He had seen it all, the slap, the silence, the tap, and he was starting to connect the dots. "DuPont," he whispered. His eyes widened. He stepped back and pulled up his staff directory, searching faster than he ever had before. Henrietta DuPont, Arbor Ethica Capital, founder, senior ethics evaluator, executive signature authority on the Air Ethica Gateway system. The same system used by the FAA, the European Aviation Commission, and 7 global airlines to evaluate whether carriers met the required ethical standards for continued operation. The same system that just downgraded SkyNorth in real time. In the cockpit, the first officer's radio lit up with back-to-back alerts. Flight ET-8412 marked ethical non-compliant. Pending review, 74 active flights associated with SkyNorth Holdings. Status, suspended. FAA requests cockpit report immediately. The captain blinked at the screen. "What the hell just happened back there?" Daniel walked toward him, holding his staff device with trembling fingers. I think we just slapped the woman who decides if we're allowed to fly." Henrietta sat perfectly still. She didn't need an apology. She didn't need an audience. She had built a career believing that silence could echo louder than outrage. And today, she proved it. The slap had been loud, but her tap? It was louder. There was a time when Henrietta DuPont's name didn't just open doors, it rewrote policy. But you wouldn't have known that from looking at her now, sitting in seat 1B. A soft cardigan draped across her shoulders, her hands gently folded over a silk scarf. She looked more like someone's sweet grandmother heading to Oregon to visit family than the architect of one of the most quietly powerful systems in modern aviation. She liked it that way. Let them underestimate her. That was the first lesson she ever learned in business. Back in Charlottesville, Virginia, the DuPont estate sat nestled behind rows of old-growth oak trees and weathered stone walls. The manor was elegant, historic, but not flashy. Henrietta had chosen it on purpose. Quiet wealth, not loud noise. From her home office, she could see the Blue Ridge Mountains stretch across the horizon like a painting. It was there, over decades, that she had built Arbor Ethica Capital, a fund dedicated to one simple idea. Money should only flow where values exist. Environmental integrity, social equity, governance transparency. Those weren't just buzzwords for her. They were non-negotiables. In the late 1990s, while other firms were chasing oil and defense contracts, Henrietta had been one of the first to propose ESG compliance as a condition for large-scale investment. People laughed then. They don't laugh anymore. Today, Arbor Ethica manages over $3.8 billion. And Henrietta personally controls the veto gate on nearly $1.6 billion in airline-linked investments across North America and Europe. Her signature, or lack of it, could decide if a carrier kept flying. And then there was Air Ethica Gateway, the system she helped design from scratch. It started as a side project, really. Henrietta had gotten tired of reading reports about in-flight discrimination, abuse, harassment, especially toward the elderly, the disabled, people of color. The problem wasn't isolated. It was structural. Airlines paid lip service to passenger rights, but rarely enforced them. So she funded a team of ethicists, engineers, and former airline execs. Together, they created a platform that could rate every airline in real time based on a set of ethical benchmarks. How staff treated passengers, how companies responded to complaints, how equitable their policies were in practice. It wasn't just a dashboard. It became an international standard. Now, the FAA, the European Aviation Commission, and even some private insurers use Air Ethica Gateway as a compliance checkpoint. Fall below a certain rating and your operating license gets flagged. Stay non-compliant for too long and it's game over. Henrietta had the only key to override status manually, and today, she'd used it. Sitting in her seat, she watched as Tina Voss strutted up and down the aisle like she still owned the sky. Henrietta didn't flinch, didn't even look her way. That would have been giving her too much power. Walter, sitting quietly beside her, stared out the window. The slap hadn't registered, not fully. His mind wandered in and out these days. She was thankful for that. He didn't need to carry this humiliation with him. "Do you want some water?" she asked gently. He looked at her, eyes soft. "Sure," he said, "but only if they bring it with lemon." Henrietta smiled. "Let's see how far their service extends today." She'd been married to Walter for 57 years, met him when she was 24, fresh out of Yale Law. He was already a foreign correspondent back then, chasing conflict zones and coups while she worked on policy briefs and clean investment clauses. They'd built a life between airports and ethics, raised 2 sons, buried one, weathered more storms than most couples could name, and now, in their 80s, their world had slowed down, but never stopped. Walter's dementia had come on gradually, forgetting things, calling their grandson by their older son's name, getting lost at the farmer's market. She'd made adjustments, color-coded labels at home, shorter travel itineraries, always sitting beside him in first class. They had earned this peace. They had paid for this comfort. No one had the right to take it from them, not with arrogance, and certainly not with violence. Across the aisle, Daniel, the younger flight attendant, kept glancing their way. He wasn't like Tina. You could tell from the way his hands shook after the slap, from how he'd watched Henrietta the way someone watches the edge of a cliff after almost falling off. He had pulled up her name on his device, saw her profile, her credentials, her authority. He looked terrified. Good, Henrietta thought. Not because she wanted him to fear her, but because someone should be scared of how badly this had gone. From her seat, she could see the cockpit door crack open. A whisper of movement, a face pale with worry. The first officer leaned toward the captain with a tablet in hand, lips moving fast. She knew the look. That's the look someone makes when they realize they're not in control anymore. She let her fingers rest gently on the edge of her handbag. Inside, the iPad was still warm. On its screen, a simple notice glowed faintly. ETH 8412. Compliance downgrade confirmed. Suspension advisory issued to FAA, EU ports, AMS, ZRH, Dowby, CEO, notification sent. It had taken exactly 7 seconds to issue the downgrade. Within the hour, 74 scheduled SkyNorth flights would be halted pending compliance review. Within the day, 3 European airports would begin refusing SkyNorth aircraft from entering their airspace. And within the week, the CEO of SkyNorth Airlines, Marcus Ellinger, would be standing in front of a press camera, signing the very ethics charter he'd once refused to acknowledge. Henrietta didn't need to say a word. The system she built was speaking for her now. Walter shifted in his seat. "You all right, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice suddenly lucid, as if the fog had lifted for a moment. Henrietta looked at him and nodded. "I'm fine." His eyes softened, and he squeezed her hand. "Good, because anyone who lays a hand on you doesn't know who they're dealing with." She chuckled. "Apparently not." Across the cabin, Tina Voss finally noticed that something was off. Passengers were whispering, watching her more intently than usual. One man in 2A pulled up his phone. A woman in 1D kept glancing at Henrietta, then at the cockpit. Daniel was nowhere to be seen. Tina straightened her uniform, then turned, just in time to see the intercom light up. "Miss Voss, please report to the cockpit immediately." Her face tightened. She paused, just a beat, then walked briskly toward the front. Henrietta closed her eyes. She didn't need to be in the cockpit to know what was happening. They were connecting the dots, and the only thing scarier than slapping a high-profile passenger is slapping the woman who signs the ethical compliance clearance for your airline. The lesson was already in motion. Not through yelling, not through threats, just through a single quiet tap. From a woman they should have never touched. Tina Voss wasn't the type to get nervous. She ran international flights, trained hundreds of junior attendants, and even once de-escalated a mid-air screaming match between a drunk hedge fund manager and a honeymooning bride. She knew pressure. She thrived under it. But standing outside the cockpit door, intercom still blinking, Tina could feel her palms sweating for the first time in years. Inside, muffled voices, urgent tones, something about non-compliance, ports refusing landing, ethics audit initiated. Her name was mentioned twice, once with a sharp tone, once with a silence after. When the door cracked open and the first officer's eyes met hers, they didn't even try to hide the alarm anymore. "Step in," he said. "Now." 10 rows back, passengers were whispering like wildfire. What just happened? Was that an alert from the FAA? She's the one who got slapped, right? Why is the flight attendant being called up front? Wait, did you see that guy pull up her name? Is she someone? Even in first class, decorum was starting to unravel. One passenger discreetly filmed with their phone angled just over the seat. Another had begun live texting a family group chat. "Someone slapped a granny in first class. It backfired. Pretty sure she's loaded. People are freaking." In row 1, Henrietta remained still, regal, untouched by the chaos swirling around her. She didn't so much as blink when Tina marched past again, her stride now tighter, more clipped. Next to her, Walter had dozed off. His hand still rested gently on hers. It was the calm Henrietta had long perfected. When things got loud, she got quieter. When others exploded, she went still. Power doesn't panic. In the galley, the other attendants had gathered. Daniel stood near the back wall, arms crossed, chewing nervously at his lip. Sarah, mid-30s, curly red hair, new to international routes, looked like she might cry. "What the hell is going on?" she asked. "Why did the captain call Tina up? And why's the FAA pinging this flight?" Daniel didn't answer. He just handed her his device and pointed to the screen. Henrietta DuPont, Arbor Ethica Capital, Air Ethica Gateway, Ethics Compliance, Senior Evaluator, FAA and ESA Partner. Sarah blinked. "Wait, so she wrote the rules we're trained under," Daniel cut in. "And Tina just slapped her." Sarah's mouth dropped open. Back up front, Tina stood stiffly as the first officer laid it out. Sky North just got flagged non-compliant in the Air Ethica Gateway. Henrietta DuPont, who you apparently assaulted, is the lead evaluator on the system. Our next 2 landings, Amsterdam and Zurich, just bounced back permissions. Dublin is threatening the same. The FAA wants a full incident report, in writing, before we even descend. So, Tina, what the hell did you do? Tina tried to gather herself. Straighten her jacket, lower her voice. She refused to move when I asked her. I was following protocol. That seat was reassigned. You slapped her. She was being difficult. You slapped her. That ended the conversation. The captain stepped in then, silent, stern, and done with games. "I want you off active duty for the rest of the flight. Sit down in the galley. The FAA will deal with this when we land." "But..." "No more arguing, Tina. You're done." By the time Tina stormed out of the cockpit, her face flushed and jaw tight, word had already spread down the cabin. People turned to look. Some ducked their heads and whispered. Others stared straight on, no longer pretending they hadn't noticed. She made her way to the back of the plane like someone being walked out of a courtroom, and as she passed row 1, Henrietta looked up. Not with anger, not with gloating, just a quiet gaze. The kind that says, "You just learned a lesson. The hard way." Meanwhile, Daniel stepped forward, now clearly the lead attendant in charge. He approached Henrietta cautiously. "Mrs. DuPont," he said softly. "Would you like anything? Water? Tea? I can have it brought fresh." Henrietta looked up, eyes calm. "Chamomile, if it's warm. No sugar, thank you." "Yes, ma'am." "And Daniel?" she added. He turned. "Yes?" Kindness doesn't require a uniform, but it matters when the uniform carries power. Daniel nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Back in the galley, Tina sat alone. She pulled out her phone and began frantically typing. Group chat with other senior flight attendants. Tina V. Some old lady flagged the entire flight. FAA involved. April C. Wait, what? Who is she? Tina V. Henrietta DuPont or something. Never heard of her. April C. DuPont? Are you stupid? That woman owns half the ethics approvals we fly on. Tina stopped typing. Everything was unraveling. Not just the flight, her entire record, her certifications, possibly her career. All because she dismissed a quiet old woman who looked like someone's grandma. And now, she sat in the dark, knees drawn up slightly, as a fresh alert hit her inbox. Temporary suspension of active duty. Sky North HR compliance. Pending external investigation. She hadn't even landed yet. Back in first class, Henrietta sipped her tea. Passengers were whispering again, but now it was admiration, not confusion. She didn't raise her voice. She never even argued. She just tapped something. Who is she? A man from row 2 leaned across the aisle. Excuse me, ma'am. I hope this isn't rude, but you handled that like royalty. Henrietta smiled kindly. There's no royalty left these days, just people who still believe in dignity. And with that, she returned to her crossword. Walter stirred beside her, blinked, looked around. We up in the air? Henrietta patted his hand. Yes, darling. Smooth ride now. He nodded. Good. You've always had a way of calming storms. She smiled, eyes never leaving her crossword. Sometimes, love, storms just recognize when it's not worth trying. The seatbelt sign hadn't even lit up when the cabin pressure shifted. Not in the air, but in the energy. One by one, the screens on the bulkhead flickered, then froze. Then all displayed the same thing. Notice, flight ethics investigation in progress. Do not interrupt transmission. A low hush fell over first class. Every head turned. Even the quiet ones, the diplomats, the executives, the always too busy to look up types, now leaned forward. Then came the voice. Calm, male, direct. Amplified across the PA system without introduction. This is Miles T. Griffin, CEO of Sky North Airlines. Tina's blood ran cold in the galley. Up in cockpit, the captain sat motionless. As of 9:04 a.m. GMT, our airline has been flagged non-compliant on the Air Ethica gateway system. This alert was triggered from Flight 7821, the aircraft you are currently aboard. We are currently under investigation by FAA and ESA authorities due to an ethics protocol breach of the highest level. Our international landing permissions in Zurich, Dublin, and Madrid have been temporarily suspended pending resolution. We are losing access to critical routes, and unless we act now, 74 flights will be grounded in the next 48 hours. The cabin fell into dead silence. Not even the babies in row 14 cried. I am speaking directly to all passengers on board, Griffin continued, but more specifically, to Mrs. Henrietta DuPont, seated in 1A. Head snapped toward row 1. Henrietta didn't flinch. She simply set down her crossword and folded her hands over her lap. Mrs. DuPont, on behalf of Sky North Airlines, I offer my direct, personal, and public apology. We failed to protect your dignity. We failed to recognize your position, but worse, we failed to follow the very system you helped build. I have just issued a mandatory ethics override across our fleet. The crew member in question has been suspended. The senior board is being summoned for emergency review. We respectfully ask for your input and your mercy in guiding us back into compliance. Henrietta glanced briefly at Daniel, who stood frozen near the galley divider. Then she reached for her iPad. With a calm precision, she tapped a single icon. Authorize Ethics Reconciliation Review, conditional. The cabin screen updated within 3 seconds. Passenger Ethics Oversight, in review. In the galley, Tina was shaking. Sarah whispered, They're going to shut down the whole airline because of you. Tina turned on her. Oh, please. She's the reason we have ethics protocols, Sarah snapped. You thought she was just some old woman. Daniel stepped in. She's not just old, she's legacy. And you're about to be a cautionary tale. Back in first class, a man across the aisle leaned toward Henrietta. Mrs. DuPont, may I just say, you didn't even raise your voice, and yet, look what happened. Henrietta offered him a soft smile. I learned a long time ago, volume isn't the measure of strength. Timing is. Walter finally stirred beside her, blinking into the overhead light. Did I miss something? Henrietta chuckled. Just turbulence, darling, but it's clearing. 10 minutes later, a soft chime rang. Daniel approached again, more formal now. Mrs. DuPont, we've received word from Zurich. Landing has been reinstated, but they'd like to speak with you upon arrival. Strictly a courtesy. Henrietta nodded. I'll take it from the lounge. Also, he hesitated, the CEO requested your input on a proposed internal reform policy, what he called the DuPont Protocol. At that, Henrietta's eyebrow lifted slightly. I didn't know he was listening that closely, she murmured. Daniel smiled. Apparently, the world listens louder when you don't shout. Meanwhile, in Sky North's Global Ops room in New York, Miles Griffin stood in front of a wall of blinking red roots. His chief of operations paced beside him. We've never seen this kind of reaction. 3 airports already issued statements. Geneva is requesting we submit a copy of our updated ethics standards within 72 hours, or they're suspending operations. Miles ran a hand through his hair. We're bleeding contracts. Investors are panicking. The COO paused. Do you know who she really is? Miles exhaled. She is the standard. Then he turned to the comms officer. Schedule the press conference. Make it clear. We're rewriting our crew training under direct guidance from Henrietta DuPont. On board, Tina was escorted off active duty by ground security upon landing. There were no outbursts, no protests, just a quiet, contained walk of consequence. Sarah watched from the corner, eyes wide. Daniel turned to her. She'll be fine, just not flying. Sarah asked, And Mrs. DuPont? He smiled. She already took off, just not in this aircraft. Later that day, a photo went viral on social media. It showed a poised, elegant woman in a lavender shawl stepping off a plane, holding hands with a gentle-looking elderly man. The caption read, She didn't yell, she didn't fight, she just pressed a button. Henrietta DuPont, Nashad Ethics wins passenger power. Within hours, news outlets picked it up. Within a week, the DuPont Protocol was signed by 11 airlines. Within a month, Passenger Ethics Index became an industry standard. And Sky North's CEO? He never missed another ethics meeting again. By the time Flight 7821 touched down in Zurich, the world had already shifted. The moment the wheels hit the tarmac, Henrietta DuPont's name wasn't just whispered in first class. It was trending in 47 countries. On TikTok, a stitched video started with a flight attendant slapping an elderly woman, followed by a glowing screen that read, Ethics non-compliant, 74 flights affected. Then came a deep-voiced narrator. She didn't argue, she didn't yell, she just tapped a screen, and the airline collapsed. The hashtag #Henrietta DuPont exploded. By 10 a.m., it had surpassed 4.2 million views. By noon, Sky North stock had dropped 16%. By evening, Miles Griffin, the CEO, was sitting under hot lights at a press conference, loosening his tie with one hand and wiping sweat with the other. This was not an isolated incident, a reporter pressed. Your airline has had previous complaints about discriminatory treatment. Griffin leaned forward. We have relied on outdated training systems. That changes today. Starting now, every single member of our staff, from crew to C-suite, will undergo ethics recertification under what we are calling the DuPont Protocol. Another reporter shot her hand up. Is it true that FAA has requested temporary oversight of your compliance systems? Griffin nodded grimly. They've requested it, and we've accepted it. A murmur ran through the room. One outlet tweeted live from the scene. Breaking, Sky North admits FAA oversight, confirms 3 airport suspensions, and acknowledges 100 minutes in delayed operations. #airline ethics. Henrietta DuPont. Meanwhile, Henrietta said nothing. She and Walter had been escorted to a private lounge. No cameras, no flashing lights. She declined interviews, ignored the press hounds. Instead, she sipped Earl Grey and read a novel by the window, while Walter snoozed gently beside her. "Should we at least issue a statement?" her assistant Lila asked via text. Henrietta simply typed back, "No voice can outshout integrity. Let the data speak." Back in the US, cable news scrambled. One anchor said it best. "Folks, we've seen passengers dragged off planes. We've seen lawsuits. But we have never seen an airline fall to its knees because an old woman pressed a button." At first, viewers laughed. Then they stopped laughing when a follow-up graphic showed 3 major airports suspending Sky North operations, $118 million in projected losses, major institutional investors pulling out FAA, confirming live audit of Sky North's internal crew compliance systems, EU regulators, freezing interline partnerships, pending ethics review. Another analyst summed it up perfectly. "This isn't turbulence. This is a structural reset." In the comments below a viral TikTok video, people shared their own stories. "My grandma was kicked off a flight once for asking for help with her walker." As a former flight attendant, Tina Voss gives us all a bad name. Shout out to Henrietta, the classiest takedown I've ever seen. Anyone got a DuPont protocol handbook yet? Some called her Air Justice Grandma. Others just wrote, "She made one tap and the whole industry blinked." At Sky North HQ, chaos bloomed. Legal teams flooded the crisis room. IT teams scrambled to reconfigure compliance pathways. One intern looked up from her dashboard and said quietly, "We're being removed from the ESG index." The room went silent. Griffin stood up slowly. "That's not possible. They need board approval for that." She turned the screen toward him. "Reason for removal. Ethics violation Tier 1, flagged by architect DuPont." His face fell. She hadn't just tapped the system, she wrote it. And now, she had executed what insiders would later call the softest execution in corporate history. By the end of the day, 3 other airlines announced immediate compliance reviews. 12 others submitted updated protocols to the FAA preemptively. No one wanted to be next. No one wanted to get DuPonted. Meanwhile, in a quiet cafe tucked in the Swiss countryside, Henrietta sat with Walter beside a small fireplace. He was humming again, something from the Glenn Miller era. She looked up from her tablet, smiled, and gently adjusted his scarf. "You know," she said, "I didn't want it to be this loud." Walter chuckled. "You didn't say a word." "That's the problem," she replied. "The world isn't used to quiet women making noise without opening their mouths." He looked at her. "But they'll hear you now." Outside, snow had started falling. Inside, her inbox overflowed with requests. World Bank, ethics consultation, UN Transportation Reform Committee, keynote speaker, Harvard Kennedy School, honorary guest lecture, FAA. Invitation to sit on the National Passenger Rights Board. She opened none of them. Just quietly archived each message, then tapped once more on the Air Ethica dashboard. Status, in review. Flight compliance, pathway, update, pending signature. She stared at the blinking screen, then smiled. Let them wait. By 6 o'clock a.m. the following morning, Sky North's corporate headquarters in New York was lit up like it was the middle of the afternoon. In the 19th floor boardroom, 11 executives, some freshly landed from Europe, others flown in overnight from Chicago, Atlanta, and LAX, sat hunched over their tablets. Miles Griffin, red-eyed and running on espresso, stood at the head of the table. His voice was calm, too calm. "Before we begin, let's be clear," he said. "This is not a PR storm. This is a structural reckoning, and it's not going away. No one spoke. The boardroom windows offered a full view of Manhattan, but no one was looking at the skyline. They were too busy watching their careers flash before their eyes. The head of operations, Gina Truss, broke the silence. Zurich, Geneva, and Madrid remain frozen. Tokyo Narita just issued a pending hold status. That's over $30 million in blocked route revenue this week alone. Miles nodded. And investors? CFO Leonard Miles spoke, barely above a whisper. We've lost 3 institutional funds overnight. Total pullout, $118 million. Pre-market value dropped another 7% as of 30 minutes ago. Someone at the far end muttered, "All over one elderly couple?" Miles turned sharply. "No, all over the wrong elderly couple." Silence again. Then he tapped the touchscreen at the center of the table. A screen blinked to life, showing a photo of Henrietta DuPont. Elegant, composed, wearing a lavender scarf and pearls, sipping tea midair. "This woman," Miles said, "doesn't just sit on the Ethics Compliance Advisory Board. She co-founded the Air Ethica Gateway. She helped write the compliance standards we use. She signed off on the API framework that rates us. And she just signed us out." A low collective exhale swept the room. "You mean she has back-end access?" Gina asked. Miles gave a tired half-smile. "She is the back end." Down the hall, 2 of Sky North's legal counsels were already in contact with the FAA's Compliance Enforcement Division. "They want answers," one said. "Specifically, when are we signing the DuPont protocol?" "Define signing," the other replied, flipping through a 28-page document. "This thing is brutal. It has teeth." Some clauses included mandatory ethics simulation labs for all flight staff, reviewed annually by a third-party consortium. Passenger behavior tracking via anonymized AI overlays for both crew and guests. Whistleblower anonymity certification. Real-time flight crew bias flagging linked to onboard Wi-Fi systems. Miles blinked at the list. "This isn't a policy document. It's an industry kill switch." That's when the assistant entered with a note. A single envelope, sealed with embossed cream paper. No email, no call. Just presence. From Geneva, marked urgent. Hand-delivered via DuPont's office. Miles opened it slowly. Inside, a folded message. To the board of Sky North Airlines. There is no need for apology, only for alignment. Should Sky North agree to adopt the Passenger Ethics Accord without edit or delay, I will authorize reinstatement of your ethical compliance rating, effective immediately. However, should your team choose delay, public spin, or performative gestures, I will be forced to downgrade Sky North's status to non-compliant, systemic, which triggers global suspension via Air Ethica Gateway at 74 terminals. The clock has started. Respectfully, Henrietta DuPont. The table erupted. Is that even legal? She can't dictate corporate policy. She's blackmailing us through a technicality. But Miles didn't yell. He just said one sentence. This woman survived 2 husbands, 5 airline mergers, and 30 years of silent compliance fights. You want to bet against her? No one did. Meanwhile, in Geneva, Henrietta sat at the edge of a quiet garden terrace, warm shawl around her shoulders. Walter dozed again nearby, birdsong drifting around him like a lullaby. Her assistant Lila, headset on, whispered, "They're panicking. One board member wants to lawyer up. Another said he'd rather crash the stock than bow to a widow with a button." Henrietta raised an eyebrow. "Let him crash it then," she said softly. "I've watched CEOs play poker with public trust my whole life. The ones who bluff loudest are always the first to fold." Lila hesitated. "Are you sure you want to force this, ma'am? This is industry shaking." Henrietta turned back to the view. "They slapped my husband across the face, in public, and then said nothing happened." "That's not just one bad apple, Lila. That's rotten roots. So yes, I'm forcing it, with a pen, not a punch." Back in New York, Miles faced the board. We either fight this and lose the European theater, or we sign, adapt, and lead the future. A younger VP raised his hand. If we sign, we lose short-term investor confidence. But if we don't, we lose Geneva. And then the rest of Europe follows. Someone added, and Asia watches Geneva. And someone else said, and so do the ethics rating agencies. We'll get flagged across the ESG sector. Griffin stood straighter. Then we sign. 30 minutes later, Sky North issued a quiet internal memo. Subject, provisional adoption of passenger ethics accord, effective immediately. Sky North Airlines has agreed to the full, unedited implementation of the DuPont Protocol across all operating divisions. Details forthcoming. This action reinstates provisional clearance at select international terminals. FAA and EASA oversight remains in place during the transition period. No fanfare, no speeches. But Henrietta received the confirmation in under an hour. She didn't reply, just smiled quietly and returned to her novel. By midnight, internal Slack channels across 5 other airlines were buzzing. Did you see Sky North caved? They just handed DuPont the keys to the cockpit. She's not flying the plane, she's flying the industry. And from a junior policy analyst at a rival airline, mark my words, in 90 days every carrier in the alliance will be scrambling to say they thought of it first. Back in her quiet hotel room, Henrietta tucked Walter in and placed her glasses on the nightstand. The lamp flickered low. Then she reached for one last note on her tablet. Ethics system reset. Initialized. It started with a ripple. By 9:15 a.m., IST, 24 hours after Sky North signed the DuPont Protocol, Aviajet, the second largest transatlantic airline, issued a 2-line press release. In solidarity with emerging ethics reforms, Aviajet will formally adopt the Passenger Ethics Accord effective immediately. No fanfare, no explanation, but it was enough to make markets twitch. An hour later, Transmercia Airlines followed. Then Coastal Link, then Union Air. By noon, Henrietta's inbox was pinging with blind copy confirmations from legal teams across 4 continents. Even Emerald Sky, the Asia-Pacific giant known for resisting any form of Western compliance, sent a discreet envoy to Geneva asking for preliminary implementation guidance. Within 36 hours, 17 carriers had either signed or declared intent to join. The media, of course, lost its mind. MSNBC ran a full panel segment called The Dignity Reset, How One Passenger Changed a $4 Trillion Industry. On CNN, a former airline exec turned commentator said, Henrietta DuPont is now the quiet architect of aviation accountability. She didn't hold a press conference. She held the system hostage, with principles. The New York Times headlined, The Passenger Who Grounded the Industry. While Time magazine went one step further, cover photo, Henrietta in profile, soft smile, eyes calm. Caption, The Woman Who Made Airlines Kneel. In an ethics symposium in DC, a transportation analyst shared, for decades, airlines self-policed. But the DuPont Accord does something regulators never could. It ties dignity to operation. You can't fly without proving you're fair. One airline whistleblower tweeted anonymously, We've been begging for this, screaming into the void. It took an elderly woman in 1A to do what 300 internal memos couldn't. Underneath, someone replied, She didn't scream. She tapped. Meanwhile, at Air Ethica's internal monitoring hub, a heat map showed a growing sea of green confirmations. One engineer whispered to her colleague, We just entered the cascade phase. Another muttered, The Accord's becoming the new passport. Henrietta's assistant, Lila, watched the chart unfold from a quiet room in Geneva. She broke the dam, Lila whispered. Now it floods. Behind closed doors, the CEOs of rival carriers tried to save face. One conference call included attempts to rename the protocol. Let's not call it DuPont, maybe something more neutral like the Universal Passenger Charter. Discussions on how to spin compliance as innovation, panic about internal culture audits. One executive barked, "We can't be seen as following Sky North. Position this as our own ethical initiative." Another muttered, "Too late." She branded it in silence. Now even our silence sounds like hers. In Atlanta, a mid-level operations director at Air Converge called her team together. "We're not waiting. As of today, we implement Tier 1 behavior evaluations on all international crew." Someone asked, "Do we even have the systems?" She replied, "We have Zoom. We have common sense. We're out of excuses." And in Miami, a black grandmother named Ella Johnson watched the whole thing unfold on YouTube. She hadn't flown in 5 years after being yelled at on a flight for taking too long to sit down with her cane. Now, she leaned toward the screen and smiled. "Bless that woman," she said. "Bless her with both hands." But not everyone was cheering. In some boardrooms, old voices growled about overcorrection and optics-driven operations. One senior airline chairman called the Accord a PR stunt with teeth. But his COO cut him off. "Sir, we lost 3 airport contracts this morning because we weren't DuPont certified. This isn't PR, this is oxygen." Back in Geneva, Henrietta sipped her tea, unread emails stacking up like leaves in autumn. She didn't need to read them. She already knew. The moment Sky North signed, the rest would fall, not out of virtue, but out of necessity. "You don't shift a glacier," she once told Lila. "You crack it once, and gravity does the rest." That evening, Walter turned to her on the balcony. 17 carriers? He asked. Henrietta nodded. "By tomorrow, 22. He chuckled. "You're going to rewrite the whole rule book." She paused. "No, I'm going to make them read the one they wrote, but never followed." He reached for her hand. "Still feel like staying quiet?" She smiled faintly, louder than ever. Far above them, jet trails crossed the evening sky, silent lines written in a language only time could read. But on the ground, the world was listening, and the message was clear. Dignity is not a luxury upgrade. It's the new boarding requirement. The Grand International Aviation Ethics Summit wasn't supposed to be a battlefield. Held once every 5 years in Montreal, it was a highly choreographed, invite-only event where CEOs posed for photos, regulators gave sanitized speeches, and ethics officers read carefully approved papers that no one remembered by lunch. The 2025 edition was expected to be no different, until Henrietta DuPont walked in. She arrived alone. No aides, no entourage. Just a single cream-colored folder in one hand and a brooch on her chest that shimmered under the hall's soft lighting. The emblem of Air Ethica, co-founded by her 23 years earlier. Most didn't notice her at first. She didn't come through the main stage entrance. She didn't wait for a speaking slot. She simply took a seat. Row 2, center. That seat, by coincidence or karma, had been reserved for the CEO of Sky North, who, 20 minutes earlier, had suddenly canceled his appearance. The ripple was instant. Whispers rolled like wind through wheat. "Is that her? DuPont's here? The DuPont protocol woman? What is she doing off stage?" The moderator looked nervous. The panelists, all senior airline executives, suddenly seemed a little smaller. The first presentation began. A well-dressed European CEO droned about collaborative ethics modeling. Another one presented slides titled Passenger Perception versus Crew Performance, Bridging the Trust Gap. People kept glancing at Henrietta. She didn't take notes, didn't blink much, but her presence said everything. By the third panel, the tension cracked. A regulator from Singapore turned and asked directly, "Mrs. DuPont, would you like to comment?" There was a pause, not because people disapproved, but because everyone was silently hoping she would. Henrietta stood. No mic, no stage. She simply stood. The trust gap doesn't come from metrics. It comes from memory. Silence. People remember the time they were told to shut up, or to move, or to leave. They remember when no one helped, when silence spoke louder than slurs. And yet, here we are, discussing modeling frameworks for empathy. She paused. Dignity is not theoretical. It is not a spreadsheet cell. It is whether your mother would feel safe flying coach. The room held its breath. The moderator stammered a thank you, but Henrietta kept going. I wrote the Passenger Ethics Accord not because I enjoy bureaucracy, but because I watched a system forget its soul. A system that could upgrade a meal before upgrading its manners. That could install facial recognition but not recognize fear. Then she held up the cream folder. Inside this envelope is the finalized architecture for the Global Passenger Ethics Charter. It includes minimum standards, behavior audit protocols, and a zero retaliation clause for whistleblowers. She walked to the moderator's table and set the folder down. Any airline that signs it within 30 days will receive Air Ethica's full certification, partner endorsements, and platform integration access. Any airline that refuses will be listed publicly. Gasps. This is not vengeance. It is maintenance of decency, of memory, of the right to board a flight without being shamed. The panel was over, but the summit wasn't. Over the next 12 hours, a line formed. CEOs, ethics officers, legal teams, all waiting to speak with the woman who, without a title or seat on stage, had just redrawn the map. Later that night, in her hotel room overlooking the St. Lawrence River, Henrietta finally sat alone, her shoes off, her scarf folded. Walter was asleep. On the desk in front of her were a dozen new messages. The FAA wanted a closed-door session. ICAO requested joint authorship on global standards. A major whistleblower group wanted to collaborate. Henrietta didn't open them right away. She simply looked out at the water and smiled. Because she hadn't needed a seat at the summit. She was the summit. 3 days after the Montreal summit, a silent storm moved into Washington, D.C. Inside FAA headquarters, on the 11th floor where only black badge security could access, a private no-record meeting was scheduled under the title Passenger Ethics Systems Integration Brief. But every person in that room knew who the meeting was really about. Henrietta DuPont didn't arrive with security, no PR rep, no spokesperson. She walked in carrying nothing but a cream folder and a reputation that now had regulators around the world scrambling to update their rule books. Seated across the oval table were top representatives from FAA, United States, DOT, Department of Transportation, ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, ESA, European Union Aviation Safety Agency, Civil Aviation Bureau of Japan, and 3 airline insurer consortiums. No press, no recordings, just decision makers, and one older woman in a charcoal gray blazer, whose name was now whispered with both fear and admiration. FAA Deputy Director Milton Garver spoke first. Mrs. DuPont, we'd like to begin by saying, the summit made waves. There's no doubt your work is moving this industry forward. Henrietta didn't nod, didn't blink. Waves won't fix turbulence, Mr. Garver. Structure will. Without waiting, she placed a cream envelope on the table and opened it slowly. This is the operational framework for the Global Passenger Ethics Charter. It includes crew behavior scoring, passenger treatment audits, a zero retaliation policy for whistleblowers, and mandatory real-time reporting to Air Ethica's Gateway network. One of the Japanese officials leaned forward. And if an airline refuses? Henrietta looked directly at him. Then they forfeit ethics compliance status. Which means, beginning Q4, they lose underwriting coverage from 3 of the 5 global insurers. Everyone went still. You can't enforce that, someone from the EU delegation muttered. No, Henrietta replied. The market will. The leverage was undeniable. Over the last 72 hours, 3 major insurers had quietly announced updates to their risk assessment standards, citing the DuPont Index as a required benchmark. The index wasn't just a scoring tool now. It had become a gatekeeper. If a plane mistreats a disabled veteran, or an unaccompanied child, or forcibly moves an elderly couple because a VIP wants their seat, there will be consequences. Consequences with financial teeth. Deputy Director Garver raised a brow. Are you proposing this be folded into FAA certification requirements? No, Henrietta said calmly. I'm expecting it. The charter won't replace your systems. It enhances them. If the FAA adopts it, it becomes policy. If not, it becomes the standard by which passengers measure your failure. Someone from ICAO tried a softer angle. You're aware, of course, that some of these clauses challenge cultural norms in certain regions. Public apology mandates, crew demotion transparency. Henrietta didn't flinch. Dignity is not cultural, it's universal. If a system can apologize when the drink cart is late, it can apologize when it wrongs someone's mother. Silence again. It was no longer just about ethics. It was about legacy, and no one in that room wanted to be the one who stood in the way of it. While that meeting unfolded in D.C., the consequences of inaction had already begun to take root. In Berlin, a leaked email revealed Sky North's panic memo. Delay implementation of charter clauses equals 12M in policy exposure. In Singapore, an anonymous flight attendant posted a video explaining how Air Ethica's behavioral tracking platform had saved her from retaliation after reporting racism on board. In New York, 3 high-profile class action suits suddenly shifted strategy, basing their legal arguments on non-compliance with DuPont charter expectations, making ethics a litigation standard. The ripple was now a wave. Back in Washington, the FAA's internal legal counsel had seen enough. They turned to Garver. If we don't align with this, we're exposing the agency to credibility collapse. She's built a parallel ethics system, backed by insurers, courts, and now media. The question isn't whether we agree, it's whether we catch up in time. Henrietta remained silent. She had said what needed to be said. Now it was their turn to catch up. Garver folded his hands. What exactly do you want from us, Henrietta? Clarity, she replied. I want full integration of the charter into all U.S. airline certification reviews starting Q4. I want ethics compliance to be publicly accessible. Crew behavior audits, passenger complaint resolutions, response time tracking. And I want your name on it, not mine. That caught people off guard. You don't want credit? Henrietta smiled softly. No one listens to old women. They listen to systems. Give them a system, and make sure it remembers what people felt, not just what they signed. Within 48 hours, the FAA quietly issued an interagency bulletin titled Advisory on Passenger Rights Harmonization, DuPont Framework Recognition. It wasn't flashy. No press conference, no official announcement. But it was real. And then came the leak. A journalist from the Atlantic Ledger got hold of the FAA's bulletin and published a piece titled, The Woman Who Made the Skies Fair Again. The article went viral. By morning, headlines around the world blared, FAA embraces DuPont's ethics charter. Airlines given 60 days to comply or face loss of insurance. Retired airline founder quietly redefines air travel norms. Henrietta, meanwhile, was back in Geneva, sitting on her patio, tea in hand. Walter reading beside her. Lila came out with a tablet, looking anxious. They want you on CNN, BBC. The Guardian wants a front-page op-ed. Say no. You sure? This is your moment. Henrietta stirred her tea. This isn't a moment. It's a repair. Let them celebrate what's changed. But they don't need to see who changed it. In Los Angeles, a mid-level airline ethics officer named Claudia Montez had just gotten off a call with her CEO. He looked shell-shocked. We're rewriting policy manuals. DuPont standard. Top-down review. If we don't, we lose Heathrow and JFK access. And they said we'll be publicly listed as ethics non-compliant on the Air Ethica platform next month. Across 6 countries, 7 airlines announced emergency compliance meetings. At O'Hare Airport, a large touchscreen was installed at Gate B19. Real-time ethics status. Charter compliant. Crew grade. A. Passengers started noticing. then asking questions, then choosing flights differently. Back at her desk, Henrietta opened a message from the ESA chair. "We are honored to adopt the Global Passenger Ethics Charter. You have changed aviation history. What shall we call this moment?" She replied with one line, "Don't call it anything. Just never forget why it was needed." A mother boards a flight in Boston with her young daughter. The flight attendant greets them warmly. No judgment, no sigh, just kindness. They pass a poster near the gate. "Your flight, your dignity," in partnership with the DuPont Charter. Neither mother nor daughter knows the full story, but somewhere in Geneva, a retired founder stirs honey into her tea, knowing she didn't just build an airline. She restored humanity to the skies. Tell us where you're watching from. Have you ever seen someone silently shift the system? Not with anger, not with fame, but with sheer integrity. We'd love to hear your story below. It started with a headline, then another, then 20 more. The woman who silenced the skies. Henrietta DuPont, ethics architect of the air. From slap to system overhaul, the quiet power of one passenger. The world had finally discovered the name behind the charter, and they couldn't stop talking about her. Cable news anchors debated her legacy. Columnists praised her as the anti-CEO, someone who reshaped the system without chasing the spotlight. Twitter trended #DuPont Charter for a full week. Even late-night comedians mentioned her, but with rare reverence, calling her the grandmother of air justice. But in Geneva, Henrietta wasn't watching any of it. She was pruning roses. The irony wasn't lost on Lila, who sat across from her on the patio, reading aloud from the New York Times. She never raised her voice, never held a press conference, but she held the entire airline industry to account. Henrietta didn't look up from her tea. "They talk like I vanished into a cloud of smoke." "You kind of did," Lila replied with a grin. In the weeks following the charter's adoption, the offers came pouring in. Keynote speaker at the Global Aviation Forum in Abu Dhabi, honoree at the World Ethics Council Gala in Vienna, a federal board seat, a 7-figure book deal with the title already pre-approved, Altitude and Integrity. Henrietta turned down every one of them, not because she was shy, but because she understood something most people didn't. Once they make you the face of a system, they'll forget the system. "I built a framework," she told Walter one night, "not a brand." Still, her refusal only made the public more curious. Reporters camped outside her Geneva apartment. Producers from Netflix and HBO reached out, hoping to turn her into a series. Even her local grocery clerk had started whispering. She ignored it all. Of course, not everyone celebrated her. A few airline executives accused her of coercive lobbying. A conservative commentator on a U.S. news channel claimed the charter was a backdoor coup of regulatory power. Some crew unions pushed back at first, nervous about real-time scoring and passenger audits. Henrietta never responded, because the numbers already were. In the first 60 days, complaints dropped by 38%. Passenger altercations dropped 51%. Compliance with safety and fairness protocols rose over 70%. One CEO who had openly opposed the charter during the summit made an unexpected statement during a shareholder meeting. "We resisted accountability. Our competitors embraced it. They won." It was late October when Henrietta boarded a plane again. She was flying economy, Geneva to Toronto. Lila protested. "You do realize you could fly first class for free on 20 airlines now. Jet, private charter, helicopter if you asked." Henrietta smiled. "I want to see it from the same seat Walter and I always sat in, just once more." As she boarded, she noticed the crew. Their tone was measured, warm, but not performative. A flight attendant helped a nervous teenage girl without drawing attention. Another knelt down to speak gently with an elderly man who needed help adjusting his belt. A third offered water to a woman bouncing a fussy infant on her hip. No one asked Henrietta to move. No one questioned her presence. Mid-flight, the captain came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, We're proud to let you know this crew has been awarded an A+ rating on the DuPont Passenger Ethics Index. Thank you for flying with dignity." A soft round of applause followed. Henrietta didn't clap. She didn't need to. She simply rested her head back against the window and let the hum of the engine wash over her. Not to fall asleep, but to feel something she hadn't in a long time. Peace. She had done it. Quietly, thoroughly, completely. Back on the ground, others picked up where she left off. A young disability rights advocate in Chicago launched an airport accessibility charter modeled after the DuPont framework. A retired flight attendant created the International Crew Ethics Collective, offering training and resources to help cabin crews adapt and thrive under the new expectations. Law schools added the DuPont Doctrine to their ethics curriculum. MBA programs wrote case studies about her decision to remain anonymous after impact. At JFK, a minimalist sculpture appeared outside Terminal 4, two bronze hands resting gently on a shared armrest. A plaque read, "Dedicated to Henrietta DuPont, who reminded us all how to sit with dignity." Henrietta never went to see it, but Lila did. She sent her a photo. Henrietta's reply was short. "Let the seats stay empty. It belongs to everyone." One early December morning, Walter found Henrietta in the garden planting winter roses. She was humming. He handed her a letter with the seal of the United Nations. "They want to nominate you," he said. "Humanitarian Service Medal." Henrietta stood, wiping dirt off her knees. "Tell them thank you, and that I already received my reward." Walter tilted his head. "And what was that?" Henrietta looked out across the lake. "The sunlight touched the water just right. A system where my husband could board a plane, and no one would ever tell him to move again. It started as a quiet shift, barely noticeable at first. But 72 days after the DuPont Charter was adopted, the FAA and the International Civil Aviation Organization released a joint statement. The message was calm, professional, and almost bureaucratic in tone. Yet its weight was historic. Effective immediately, all airline certifications must meet and maintain a verified Passenger Fairness Index score. That meant every airline in the US, Europe, Asia, Africa, and beyond now had to pass not only safety and technical audits, but ethical audits too. It was the first time in history that dignity had been made a condition of flight. The aviation world blinked. Some airlines welcomed the change, others panicked. A few fought back behind closed doors, sending lawyers and lobbyists to try to dilute the enforcement. But the momentum was already too strong. The public had tasted transparency, the idea that ethics could be measured, and that passengers had a right to humane treatment was no longer negotiable. Airports, too, began shifting. Boarding gates in major hubs like Frankfurt, Atlanta, and Singapore installed new signage. "This airline is PFI compliant." Passengers scanning their mobile tickets could see live data on crew behavior history, reported incidents, and response times to discrimination complaints. And people noticed. A single mother traveling with 3 children no longer received side eyes from staff. Elderly passengers didn't have to justify their need to sit next to their spouses. Ethnic minorities, once viewed with suspicion, were greeted with the same professionalism as anyone else. "You could feel it," one passenger told a reporter at LAX. "The temperature in the air changed, like someone turned down the judgment and turned up the respect." Lila watched it all unfold. From her kitchen table in Geneva, where fresh croissants cooled on a plate beside her, she read report after report. What touched her most were the emails from strangers. A flight attendant in training wrote, "We were shown a video of the DuPont incident. It's now mandatory learning. I just wanted to say thank you." A 16-year-old black boy from Detroit messaged, "I saw someone like me not get pulled for extra screening. First time ever. It's weird, but I felt normal." Even CEOs who once mocked the charter now scrambled to post about how their airlines were ahead of the curve. Henrietta didn't read the press, but she read the handwritten letters. Walter would bring them in from the mailbox, carefully sorted with his usual quiet reverence. He never opened them. That was her ritual. One letter was from a pilot. I used to ignore things. I didn't want to rock the boat. But after what happened to you and your husband, I realized silence is complicity. I filed my first ethics complaint today. Henrietta read it twice, then placed it gently in a wooden box where she kept the letters that mattered most. She never replied publicly, never did interviews, no op-eds, no television specials. Instead, she wrote 3 words in her journal that night. It was time. But the effect didn't stop with aviation. Cruise companies began requesting guidance to build their own Sea Fairness Index. Intercity rail operators in Europe announced collaborations with the DuPont Advisory Council. Even rideshare companies asked for consultation on fairness scoring algorithms. Within 6 months, a global consortium was formed, the GPC, Global Passenger Consortium. Henrietta refused the honorary chair. Instead, she sent a simple note to the board's first meeting. Every seat is a story. Measure them with care. By now, the media was calling it the ethics revolution. And for once, it wasn't a hollow phrase. At Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, staff created a dignity lane boarding process for vulnerable travelers. In Tokyo, a partnership between Narita Airport and a university launched an AI-powered assistant to pre-flag conflict triggers at gates. Even airline shareholders began paying attention. Investment funds added PFI scores to their ESG, environmental, social, governance criteria. Airlines with low scores saw sharp declines in investor confidence. One CEO who had refused to adopt the charter standards fired within a week after his airline's PFI score plummeted and customers began canceling bookings en masse. Walter read that headline out loud to Henrietta over tea. She didn't gloat. She just said, "The numbers are catching up to the values." Meanwhile, Henrietta kept gardening. She rarely spoke of the reforms, but she observed everything. The rhythm of change was like planting seasons, slow at first, but inevitable if nurtured. Then, one quiet spring morning, she and Walter boarded a flight. It was their first time flying since the incident. They flew economy, no VIP treatment, no announcements, just 2 elderly passengers quietly taking their seats in row 12A and 12B. And yet, the gate agent had smiled without forcing it. The seat assignments were correct. A young steward greeted Walter with a kind nod, offered to help with his jacket, and let Henrietta settle in without rushing her. During the flight, they saw something else. A baby began to cry 2 rows ahead. The crew didn't scold the mother. They offered assistance. An older gentleman stumbled during turbulence. A flight attendant helped him back to his seat and offered water without embarrassment. And then it hit her. Not all at once, but in waves. Henrietta closed her eyes. Inhale, exhale. This is what justice looked like. Not with headlines, not with power plays, but with peace. Walter leaned toward her and said softly, "They don't know who you are." Henrietta smiled. "They don't have to." Later that month, Lila received a call from the United Nations Office of Human Rights. They wanted to meet with Henrietta in Geneva to discuss expanding the DuPont framework into other human mobility systems. Refugee relocation, humanitarian airlifts, even border transit. Henrietta declined the invitation, but she sent back a single, handwritten reply. If dignity cannot travel across borders, then borders have failed. As the world adjusted to the new standard, something else began to shift. People didn't just feel safer on planes, they felt seen. The FAA released a report at year's end. In-flight disputes dropped 47%. Passenger complaint resolution times improved by 60%. Crew retention increased by 30%. Public trust in the aviation system reached its highest level in over 2 decades. Henrietta never commented on the numbers. She spent that evening walking with Walter in the garden, surrounded by the quiet hum of spring insects and the slow bloom of peonies. Back in the house, Lila asked her one simple question. "Do you think it's over?" Henrietta thought for a long time, then answered, "Not over, just airborne." And in the silence that followed, you could almost hear the echo of thousands of quiet decisions across airports, terminals, crew rooms, and cockpits, all guided by a woman who never once raised her voice. It wasn't about revenge. It never was. 12 months after the incident that had sparked a global transformation, Henrietta Dupont stood alone at the edge of the runway at a small airfield outside Avignon, France. The breeze was soft. Planes hummed faintly in the distance. Her cane, now more symbolic than necessary, rested lightly on her hand. The world had changed. But Henrietta? She had simply returned to the rhythm she'd always known. Quiet observation, intentional action, and letting others take the spotlight. The DuPont Charter was no longer just a policy document. It had become embedded into every layer of international travel. FAA training manuals cited it on page 1. New hire orientation videos across major airlines started with Henrietta's quote, "Every seat is a story." At LAX, JFK, and Heathrow, a traveler could now see an airline's Passenger Fairness Index score next to their gate number. Parents of disabled children no longer had to argue for seating accommodations. Elderly couples were helped without fuss. Cabin crew received real-time feedback and had in-cabin support specialists trained in de-escalation. But beyond the structural changes, something deeper had shifted. The culture of flying itself. Airports, once frantic and impersonal, now carried an undercurrent of accountability. Whispers of, "Don't mess up, this could be a DuPont case," kept egos in check. Flight attendants greeted passengers with eye contact. Gate agents asked questions instead of making assumptions. Henrietta had become a symbol. Not a celebrity. Not a martyr. A signal. When Sky North Airlines rebranded to Air Clarity, they did so with a ceremony that didn't feature fireworks, but rather a montage of real passenger stories. A deaf traveler who finally felt heard. A Muslim woman no longer profiled. A black teenager upgraded without fanfare because his name matched a known ethics donor. None of those stories mentioned Henrietta by name, but she watched every single one, quietly, from her living room in Provence. Meanwhile, Walter had become something of a legend himself. Passengers at Denver International once spotted him reading alone and approached, recognizing his face from a viral clip. When asked if he'd take a picture, he smiled and said, "Only if you treat the person next to you with kindness. That's worth more than a selfie." The photo still made the rounds online, but it was the quote that stuck. Henrietta, for her part, remained exactly as she'd always been. Deliberate, invisible by choice, and focused on permanence over noise. And permanence came. The United Nations officially named the DuPont Protocol as the template for its Human Mobility and Dignity Directive. ICAO built a certification standard based on it. Flight attendant unions adopted its principles as part of their core charter. But the most telling shift? Law schools. 3 top institutions launched a course titled Operational Ethics in Civil Transportation, and Case 1 was DuPont versus Sky North. It was no longer about one flight. It was about legacy. One crisp morning, Lila arrived in Avignon with a box in her hand. Henrietta was tending to her roses. "It's here," Lila said, voice steady. Henrietta opened the box slowly. Inside was a single brass plaque. In honor of Henrietta Dupont, who reminded us that the sky belongs to everyone. It would be placed at Gate 42 of the newly renamed Unity Terminal in Washington, D.C. Henrietta blinked slowly. "I never wanted a plaque." "You didn't," Lila said gently. "But the world needed one." That evening, over tea, Walter asked the question he'd asked many times. "Do you think it was worth it?" Henrietta didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at a small stack of letters by the window. Some were written in crayon, others in elegant cursive. One, from a 9-year-old girl named Marisol, simply read, "I want to grow up and be the lady who makes the planes kind." Henrietta smiled. "Yes," she said. "It was worth everything." The final shift came in silence, not with a headline, Not with a Senate hearing, but with a simple moment on a regional flight from Dallas to Boston. A flight attendant gently tapped the shoulder of an elderly man in a cardigan who looked confused by his seat assignment. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, sir. We'll make sure you sit next to your wife. That's our DuPont rule." He didn't know what that meant, but someone behind him did. A young woman teared up. She remembered the story, the one that had made her choose aviation in the first place. Henrietta DuPont had never wanted to be famous. She wanted to fly with dignity. And now, generations after her, the world was finally learning how. Tell us where you're watching from, and what's one act of quiet dignity you'll never forget. Leave it in the comments.